So in this section, I would like to talk about the background or talk around the Tummo practice. It's not about how to do Tummo or let's do Tummo right now, not like that. It's important to know the little bit of context. I'm sure many of you already know, but it's nice to go over the context and also background, terminology, what it entails, and so forth. What do you think? Of course, in the subtle body training, we really focusing on Tummo practice. We do the little bit of theory, but not much. We really dive into the juicy stuff. So here we cannot do the really, body, to core and those kind of things we cannot do at this moment. So the little bit of background. So also connection to Dakini. It's so important. It seems like two more Dakini, two things. What we have been doing so far to creating a relationship or friendship with Dakini, all are the preparation for this completion stage. So I just wanted you to know that in the sense that, okay, now we're going to switch gears from 5 Dakini practice to just completion stage. So forget about Dakini. No, Dakini will assist us to generate this great bliss. You remember messenger? Dakini is another name is called messenger. They deliver the spontaneous or innate or connate or ecstatic great bliss in us. Tummo practice, for example, Dakini will help us if we keep up with this good terms, so to speak, relations, or integrate Dakini teaching and invite Dakini more and more to our daily life, as well as our practice on the cushion of the cushion. So that's important. So in terms of Tummo, you hear a lot, right? T-O-M-M-O. So Sanskrit called Chandali, Tibetan translation of Sanskrit term Chandali. But literally means it's not inner heat. No implication of inner heat or psychic heat or something like that. Tum means fierce, and Mo is a lady or woman or female ending. That means fierce lady, literally meaning. So when I translate the fierce lady, some people had a problem with it, but that's a literal translation. That's why I put the quote. So fierce lady of inner, you can say the inner heat that transform desire. So that's how I translate it. This is the translation of the term of Chandali. Chandali is a class of goddesses. So again, this is the Dakinis. One kind of Dakinis. Tummo itself is a Dakinis, one class of Dakinis, a class of goddesses. They often translate into inner heat, psychic heat, fire, and so forth. So though this is not literal, but this is how we usually translate. But I like that kind of the poetic rendering, more connotation of the Dakinis help assist. Descriptive yogic language of heat. That's called Tummo. So this Tummo can be a standalone practice or enhancing practice to completion yogic practice. When we say the Tummo practice, sometimes when we watch the YouTube or something like that, the Qigong teacher teaching, this is a Tummo breathing. But Tummo breathing itself is not Tummo, so it's a specific breathing technique. So it does not refer to the Tummo. So we are talking about this context. It's embedded in the broader Vajrayana tantric contemplative curriculum, you can say. So we are doing kind of curriculum, step by step, like a preliminary practices, which has 2 stages, 2 levels. Ordinary preliminaries, what are they? And the extraordinary preliminaries, what are they? We have been practicing, studying, contemplating, meditating. What's the ordinary preliminaries? There are 4 that we have been doing in the Lamrim practice, even before we step into the tantric practice. Yeah. First, the ordinary preliminary, those 4 thoughts, what are they?
Precious human life, death and impermanence, unacceptability, I'll just say, of samsara.
Disadvantage of samsara.
Karmic cause and effect.
Yeah, those things, right? Those are kind of, even before we step into the tantric practice, this is something we need to establish. We're still doing that. because until we come to realization, non-conceptual understanding, we have to become one with this, for example, precious human life, regardless of whatever happening, not only the, certain circumstances. That's the ordinary. So what's the extraordinary preliminary practice?
Refuge, Vajrasattva purification, mandala offering, and Guru Yoga.
Yeah, refuge and
That's
bodhi,
about
those are the one sometimes required to do that before seriously enter into tantric practice. But we are also practicing here. In Gerut tradition, for example, just 100,000 Lerun close retreat, not required to complete all these things. Of course, when we do the great retreat, Niancheng, like 3-year retreat or something, we have to start doing processing that. We have 9 of these preliminaries in Gerut traditions. And then now enter into what's the next stage. We came to, this is the Lamrim, right? Let's say Vajrayogini Lamrim. Ordinary preliminary, extraordinary preliminary, then generation stage. Right. Practicing generation stage. This is the process of simulating oneself as a sublime body of deity. So deity yoga is the synonymous to the generation stage. Dhamma-tsongkhapa's definition, or the defining characteristic of generation stage, is a deity yoga. This is a performative visualization based on the kind of script called the sadhana. I call the journey, human journey, spiritual journey, sacred journey. So we are practicing these journeys, ritually perform with gesture and bodily posture, mantra, and visualization. You know these generations, how to start with reducing everything into emptiness, then unfold from emptiness, or unfold within the emptiness, everything unfold. Then again dissolve back to emptiness, or this kind of play between emptiness and form. But this is the divine play, not the ordinary play. So we replacing the ordinary journey with this divine journey, divine life. What's the purpose of generation stage? What's the outcome of generation stage?
To develop the illusory body.
Even before that, generation stage is still simulating process, right? Of course, developing illusionary body is the ultimate outcome. But in terms of generation stage, what would you say when you said, oh, I completed the generation stage?
I think we're working to create the facsimile illusory body, and in doing that, we're replacing the afflicted body or self that we have habitually been saddled with, or saddled ourselves with.
3 recognitions maybe, but just developing this view of the sacred outlook, divine pride, but that every body is Vajrayogini. Everything you think, see, and hear is pure in a form of Vajrayogini in your own mind. So to me, the generation stage is generating this capacity to be in the world and see the world and respond to the world as this divine deity.
Sacred outlook and the sacred dignity. So the 2 enemies I often talk about in Tantra, on the top of the 2 enemies in Sutra, which are self-cherishing, self-grasping, then Tantra has the ordinary appearance, that same old, this room and the world, this suffering world, this kind of ordinary appearances. And also ordinary perception, who you think you are, this ordinary kandora, same old. So those 2 are the enemies, right? Then in order to counteract this ordinary perception and appearance, we practice the divine pride and the sacred outlook. So when we wake up in the morning, one day we wake up morning, you are Vajrayogini, no doubt about that. Not you wake up as an ordinary, same old being. And also look at the world, or not just ordinary room, but your mandala, holy sacred mandala. Then you can say you accomplished the generation stage. That's the kind of beginning of completion stage, going into the more defining process. So generation stage practice still conceptual, right? Self and other, subject and object, but it's getting closer and closer. When we come to the completion stage, theoretically speaking, you are already Idam. You have an idea of you are already Idam body. So that's why it's so easy when we finish that, or at least in the process of melting this ordinary appearance and ordinary perception in the stage of generation or creation phase, you are already a transparent subtle body, and then the visualization of the subtle body, it's much easier. So generation stage is the preparation for completion stage. In the completion stage, it's completely non-dual. Basically, that's why it's called completion stage. It's make what we practice in generation stage and complete. That's the completion stage. So completion stage involves the somatic yoga, yogic practice. In terms of completion stage, it's not just one practice, right? Set of tantric practices designed to somatically and cognitively transform the ordinary body into the subtle body, from a non-Buddha body to the Buddha body. So actually, so in terms of generation stage, we are artificially starting, then slowly that kind of become non-dual. But then in completion stage, we make really non-Buddha body into the Buddha body, illusionary body. Completion stage involves a lot of things like a breath walk, somatic exercises, and ritual, and visualization to manipulate the inner vital body energies, bodily energies, and take control over this inner wind. That's the kind of idea. Also harness the extreme experiences, for example, base breathing and tummo, and also other exercises, for example, other completion stage like a dream yoga or something like that, including falling asleep. These luminal stage transition from here to there, like these kind of transition. So that's the time the kini is aboard. Those time just before falling asleep or dying, or perhaps orgasm, or those kind of extreme time, but extreme experience. Those are to harness those experiences. And you can say edge or transitions. You also might have some experiences, something extreme happened. Then this sense of ego or self dissolve. You can say threshold experiences to transmute these energies into insight, transform it into the wisdom or insight, or unveil the inside within. Wisdom is within, because all the veils are lifted, perhaps maybe temporarily, but in completion stage, we are trying to unveil the permanently, because it's already the prana. We are talking about the prana and the mind together. Even you want to cover it, you cannot, because the prana want to flow inside. Prana want to flow in the central channel. That's the prana, like a, pipe. Certain pipe is stuck, but the water flows in the certain directions, want to flow. But then the stagnation or something there blocking. But if you take or untie that blockage, then water gush flow into that. So that prana is the same. That's the true nature. Your true nature is bliss. Your true nature is sweetness. So want to flow. But what blocking is all this choking, conceptually, mentally, psychologically, physically, karmically, all different levels of oscillations blocking for prana to flow inside. Therefore, we are doing all these different preliminaries and the generation stage to overcome certain levels of oscillation. And finally, completion stage, we are kind of dusting off this karmic knots which we carried since the beginningless of time. That's a quite a stubborn one. But then all these other creation obscurations are already removed and so forth. Then finally, last stage is this non-conceptual, just resting on the stage. For example, Mahamudra, just resting Mahamudra, Dzogchen practice or open awareness practice or something. But that's a kind of quite a last stage, although we integrated those resting practice into active practice as well. So that's Tummo. Tummo breath work is integral part, integral to completion stage yoga. In the several systems I was talking about, 6 Dharma, 6 yoga of Naropa, Niguma, and Ramde in Sakya, and also 6-fold Vajra yoga of Kala Chakra. So Kala Chakra system, they have this. And of course, Guhya Samaja I mentioned, and other practices. And the post-tantric systems of Dzogchen and Mahamudra. I say the post-tantric system because the tantric system, Tantra implies this active practice. It's called a path of a method, Tapram, path of method, and the path of liberation. These are two kind of paths. So method, this is a tantric practice, like Idam practice, generation practice, and path of liberation. That is Mahamudra, post-tantric Mahamudra and Dzogchen practice, you can say, if we categorize in that way. Although we combine both, so that's become juicy. But I want you to know in terms of different levels of practice. So there are lots of variations. So it's important to know the fact that there are lots of degrees of variations in distinct tantric systems. So this is not just one system. I have one quote, important one. And Yargompa, there's his book about subtle body. He talks about, if you don't understand the actual abiding nature of the body, if you don't understand their nature, abiding nature, true nature of the body, you don't understand the vital point of the meaning of meditation. This is just one quote of many, many quotes to talk about the primacy of the body, primacy of understanding and realizing all the 3 levels we talked about, body prior to the mind. In a sense, like a mind and body, of course, are inseparable in our system, not like West, the mind-body separation, but this emphasis of the understanding abiding nature of the body, because it has a subtle body. This has a prana, wind. This is important. Therefore, this is the basis of why we practice these physical exercises and Tummo. Because if only mind, we are concerned about the changing, transforming a mind, of course, that's a relative level, very important, right? Like a Brojon, transformation of the mind attitude. Those are very important in Sutric tradition. So we do that. But when we come to this advanced practice, this understanding of the abiding nature of the body, and manipulating or taking control over the inner wind, room, prana, is so crucial. Therefore, we care about the body. Therefore, we care about subtle body training. So in terms of background of Tummo, anatomy of the subtle body, I already talked about those channels and chakras, wind and nuclei that defined seminal essences that resemble the shape of liquid drop. That is Chansen, Kalpo, and Chansen, Malpo, red drops and white drops. So Tummo as a contemplative practice. Of course, Tummo includes meditation along with the exercises, right? Tuko is a part of the Tummo practice. But Tummo as a contemplative practice. So sometimes Tummo breathing meditation or something, breathing exercises or something saying on the YouTube. And this Qigong teacher or Tai Chi teacher teaching the Qigong Tummo breathing. But that does not refer to the Tummo practice. You know by now that, so that's a part of it, maybe. I don't know, I haven't watched it, just title I saw. The practice to mobilize the vital winds, prana, room, and the energies within the subtle body to enter into the central channel, enabling these currents to be harnessed for transformation. It's about the transformation. I entitled Fierce Lady Who Transforms Desire, Ordinary Desire, into Great Bliss, which perceives emptiness. So that's kind of a nutshell of the Tummo aim. So principle of the practice include the formal practice, right? Formal practice that involves a set of time, location, posture, intent, all these things. So that's what we do in the context of the Buddhist practice, tantric practice. But we're gonna slowly talk about, once we learn how to do it, then how we can incorporate that one into our daily practice, which part of the Tummo practice, then follow the scripted sequences. So I'm gonna explain those sequences in subtle body training, then how to go about it, stage by stage, that engage the body, speech, and mind. Then very important to monitoring the experience and making adjustment to sign, measures, pitfalls, and the obstacles. So that's why sometimes we said Tantra is very dangerous without realized masters who went to that same place. This importance of having living teachers who can guide us, and the teacher whom we can access. We can ask questions. Otherwise, even might cause death. That's what we don't want. There are many pitfalls. Of course, powerful, like electricity. If it's very powerful, always have a misuse of that power, or just kind of negative side of it. It's also important to be aware of that. Then practiced in sessions measured by duration, frequency, and regularity of practice. There are many ways to go about it, but actually imperative to practice under the supervision of qualified teachers who can be responsible to emergent experiences. The more we come to the advance, the more we need that sort of direct communication with realized masters. And also beginning and the end. Those are very crucial. You need an accessible guide. Then of course, outcome is the union of bliss and emptiness, non-dual experience. That's what we are aiming for. The purpose is not about heating the body. Having said that, again, this same Yan Lumpa talks about the benefit or the reason why we practice Tummo. I'm going to say the 4 reasons, possible outcomes of Tummo. First one is to purify obscurations and the hindrances that come up. So that's the purification purpose. We are not talking about enlightenment or nothing like that, just purification purpose. Very powerful way to purify and to transform. Then second reason is to cure diseases or illnesses, or even terminal illnesses, and overcome different types of sicknesses. That's the second. So medical reasons. So preventative kind of matter and medical reason. Then the third one is pacifying pressure. Now we are talking about emotional levels, pacifying conflicted emotions. See, even 3 of them among 4 is a more mundane, or even we are not talking about enlightenment. Those 3, but those 3 lead to the enlightenment. The 4th one is to recognize or realize this non-dual awareness. You can say Mahamudra realization. So first 3 is those Tummo outcome. Therefore, Tummo practice is so beneficial, just even not talking about enlightenment. Just you can say mundane purposes, or helping, assisting our day-to-day life. For example, healthy body helps to practice to come to the final complete awakening or something like that. Right? Without a healthy body, it's difficult. So in that sense, we should not underestimate, so to speak. Instead, oh, this is not so spiritual or something, just curing the disease. Like we practice Tummo, spiritual practitioner, draw the line, this is the spiritual, this is not spiritual. But Tummo practice take care of everything, all the way to enlightenment. From the mundane day-to-day cough I was having. Anyway, so I just sidetracked, but that's the 4 reasons possible outcome of Tummo and the importance of the application applicable to modern day practitioners. Having said that, always put in the context is accelerate this process of Tummo realization. Otherwise, we stop there. There was a cartoon. Nowadays, Tummo is maybe in a dictionary, I don't know. Cartoon. First, Tibetan guru gave the wet sheet to the disciple. That's the first scene. Have you seen this one? Then the next one is put the wet sheet on the body and meditate on the Tummo. Then all complete dry. Then the third column is bring that dry sheet, which this disciple dried up, returned to the teacher. And then teacher said, oh, good job, you are ready. He said, what's ready for? Then the last one punchline is this monk is sitting in a laundry mat. And then they put 25 cents to, to dry the sheet. So basically using that power to dry the sheets, to dry up the clothes in a laundry mat. So that's kind of a popularity of the Tummo practice. We don't want to end up in a laundry mat. We want to end up in a Dakini land, don't you think? Then another one, important one, this is a big subject, so we cannot maybe go in there. Then this parallel paradigm between Tummo and sex. This sexual bliss or bliss Tummo relationship. And the last point is working with the technology of breath. So nowadays, scientists started to put all these things and then started to do a research about the brain, what's going on when you do the Tummo practice, then which part of the brain is light up and so forth. Then research shows Tummo to be a kind of internal shock method to the body that activates, allows us sympathetic nervous system and increase the blood flow. However, this can be injurious, may even cause death under certain conditions, as you can imagine. Yeah, so future research might be very important. Also, what the part of the brain or regions light up, where there is an increase of blood flow, or when you have an orgasm, which part of the brain is light up, and when you do a Tummo practice, which part of brain is the same regions or the different, or what's the difference? Scientifically speaking, we are talking about. So those kind of things are interesting area, but of course, beyond our capacity, we just want to authentically put into practice, even just start the process, so to speak, little by little, even breath breathing every day, a little bit of breath breathing, and then you can hold longer and longer. Also, you need a little bit of trick, kind of what you call the tip, so to speak. I often talk about that in Saddleboard training, when you close the lower gate and then when you hold, we should not really do that kind of macho holding. How to do breathing properly so that you can retain the breath longer. That is very important. Like when you are soaking in the Japanese bathtub, you can hold forever. kind of feeling, relax. Of course, then in that relaxation, there's the harness inside the crucial point. Something happens, arise, heat comes up, then melt, then great bliss, and so forth. So we're gonna go into this a little more theoretically, but fierce ladies of yogic heat. When I was young, when I first read this description, what you call Alexandra David Neal, do you know her? She was my heroines. There was not many female. She was a scholar as well as a kind of wild practitioner in Tibet, Himalayas. Anyway, she was like one of my heroines, and she described about this tumor. Wow, quite wild. Oh, she also described about the Cho. Quite a kind of distorted description of Cho practice. But anyway, so at that time, wow, when I gonna practice, it felt like something so esoteric and far away. But then when I came step by step, exactly as our lamas, our teachers showed us how to go about it, then naturally came to, yeah, this is the kind of natural progression. Is now kind of feels ready to just guide it. I felt like I was guided by Dakinis, and you also join this journey, Dakini's Whisper journeys, and together. So I feel so blessed and happy about this.
You can save on heating bills, can't you, as well, by keeping warm? If you master Tumo, because wasn't Milarepa called when you've mastered Tumo, aren't you called a Repa? And hence says Milarepa. And once they mastered it, they wear a white, just a thin white cotton shirt.
Yeah.
So if you master Tumo, we can cut down our heating bills because everything's got really expensive here. So a fifth reason, saving heating bills, pure obscurations.
Saving the heating bill and all these things. Yeah, those are the one of the outcome. Up to date, still doing those sheet drying competitions. 3-year retreatants comes out and doing, even female yoginis, and they do. And the relationship to great bliss, we didn't go into much today, but this experience of bliss is very important. Even in our daily life, started to connect more and more, not only after eating chocolate, something melt. This relationship to this emotion and the feeling body and the subtle body and tight knots. For example, Tomo practice. Okay, much about the Tomo practice. I'm gonna do Tomo practice. I'm gonna attain something. Well, at that point, already choking the channels and chakras, and so it's like a relaxation and connecting more and more blissful feeling is very important in our daily life. Even mundane things. Yeah, see if we can see the blissful nature or the extraordinary nature in the ordinary things. Having fun is so important. Yeah, having fun. Dance, your favorite music, if you have, you turn the music and allow the body to move. So naturally started to loosen the knots. So, try to, or just allow your body to be free from the cage of your conceptual mind. That's important.
The thing that keeps coming up for me is the fierce Dakini practices we did in Subtle Body, and how that ferocity was a new discovery within me and lit something up that's wonderful to have.
Yeah, those unfamiliar, like a philosophy or something like without any judgment. They actually enjoy, kind of surprised, happy surprise, and discovering this quality each of us has. So those are a very important discovery, and conjoined with Tomo practice. That's what we do in Subtle Body training. Okay, so just have a quiet moment, and then we end with the dedication prayers. How about the auspicious prayers? Yeah, this is the auspicious prayer asking to all the different dimensions of Dakinis to help us, guide us on this journey. Maybe we haven't done enough to asking. So we have to really pray and ask, supplicate, and so forth. So just for a few moments, rest in this after you asking for auspiciousness of all different expression of Dakinis to support you, guide you, and lead you to Dakini Pure Land right here, right now. And I want you to dedicate the goodness that comes from today's practice, experience, and sharing, studying, learning for the sake of all sentient beings. May everyone be liberated, free from unnecessary suffering, and come to realize who and what truly they are.